So we're going to look today at Parashat Kedoshim, at chapter 19 of Parashat Kedoshim. I don't think we can get more than that, and it's a very concentrated chapter. There's a lot of laws here, and the interesting thing about the laws in this chapter is that some of them don't fit the category. A lot of them fit under the rubric of concept between us and other people, like Ben Adam l'Havero, but some of them don't fit this category, such, for example, as do not turn to idols, do not make molten gods. When you make a sacrifice, you have to eat it on the first and second day. Don't leave more for the third day. So we have to look into that. See what is the common denominator of all the laws in this chapter, right? But it's important to know that we could say this is sort of the center of the book of Leviticus, almost the center in terms of the length of the book. It's chapter 19 out of 30, almost. It's even though it's almost 30, but in terms of length, it's somewhere in the middle. And in the middle of that chapter, we have this very famous verse 18. Ve'ahavta le'reacha kamocha ani Adonai, love the other as you love yourself, which is the golden rule, which is the whether we say Hillel told the men who wanted to convert, what Rabbi Akiva said is the center of the whole Torah. And it's true, it is the center of the whole Torah, in the sense of, and we spoke about it several times, that all the mitzvot and all the obligations and the disciplines that we find in the Torah are not for God's sake. God does not derive any benefit from what we do. It does not affect Him. If we sin, it does not harm Him. So He created the world for some reason that is completely unknown to us. He put us here, again, for some reason that we do not understand. The world could have been perfect without humans. With animals, it would be a nice, a world for aliens to come and visit once in a while without, wars and destruction and all that. But God does tell us that if we want to live our life in a good way, and to make the maximum of it, we should follow the Torah mitzvot, and then that's what we do. So God gives us a dual system of laws that govern our behavior towards God, and laws that govern our behavior towards others, including ourselves. Why is it necessary? If the whole idea of the world is eventually for us to have a perfect world when we are nice people, so we don't need the mitzvah between us and God. The answer is that if we would only get the social mitzvot, we wouldn't keep them. Because a lot of societies try to do that, to have social justice, but without the concept of the reverence of the divine, it's very hard to keep it together. And it has been proven that, we spoke about that communes that were established in the United States in the 1800s, there were social communes and there were religious communes. All of them eventually fell apart, meaning they were like colonies that had their own rules. So if they had religious rules, they survived longer, 20 or 30 years longer than communes that were based only on social rules, because sooner or later, someone is going to breach the laws. Once you get to a critical mass, this is what happens when a certain community, let's say you have a community that has social rules. You cannot steal. You cannot steal. You cannot deceive. Etc. Etc. Right? And cheaters will be punished and all that. But what happens is that once you get to a certain mass, and that's the same mass that sociology say there's a limit to how many people you can know personally. They put the number at about 150. After that, you start losing the details of the relationships. So once a society passes this number, some people could be freeloaders. They could hitch a ride on the society without giving anything, or basically what they do, they embezzle other people. They take the resources of others, and then society falls apart. And today we refer to it in large societies as corruption, as embezzlement, as white-collar crimes, which for some reason are forgiven. If you embezzle someone for $400 million, it's forgiven. If you stole $5, you could be thrown to jail. And also in terms of the damage that is caused in the United States alone, estimates are that theft and robbery were like violent crimes, and burglaries and etc. cause a damage of about $400 million a year, while embezzlement, corruption, etc., $40 billion a year. There's no proportion, but people feel more comfortable doing that because they don't know the victim personally. It's sort of they're detached. And a lot of the laws that we find in this chapter really revolve around that. It's especially there's a concentration in verses 11 to 13. You shall not steal, you shall not deny, you shall not lie one to another. You shall not make a false oath in my name and desecrate God's name. You should not deprive your friend from something that he deserves. It's called la'ashok. Lo tigzol, you should not rob, take violently. Velo talim porat sachir etcha ad boker, and you should not delay the payment of an employee until the morning. All these laws are basically saying that you have to make sure that the other person gets from you what they deserve. So this is the system. Once you revere God, you find it more difficult to embezzle other people. And that's an experiment that Dan Ariely, is a sociologist, a psychologist, conducted experiments along these lines. And what he found out is that when people were given an opportunity to cheat, they took the opportunity. And they would deceive more, right, unfortunately, and they would deceive more, if it's indirect. The more you... The more, the levels of separation, the more removed you are from, like, if I'm told to go up to you and tell you a lie, I will lie less. But if I'm going to tell you something that you are going to tell him and he's going to tell her, then I will lie more. But what was interesting is that when people were asked to write down the 10 Commandments, before they started the experiment that was meant to see if they're going to deceive or not, they cheated less, even if they didn't remember any of the commandments. Meaning, just the idea that there are commandments and maybe there is a God and maybe this God is looking at me already held them back. So that is what sociologists believe from an evolutionary point of view. The role of religion, it helps keep societies together, but of course it can go right. Alan, yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
do you not think it's implicit in the way we are set up as humans, and humans who follow a religion, and a very old and very clever religion, that we've been given a sort of series of steps, there's a base and balances, so that we do know how we treat each other, whether it's bad or good.
Right.
But we're always thinking there's a higher plane, and we know more in ourselves if we're following something that's holy and etc. that we believe in, and we're reaching. Otherwise, it's a sort of a flat.
Yes, right. It's there. The problem is that you have people who say either I'm an atheist, I think that religion is corrupt, etc., etc., and they and I could be a good person without that, which some of them can. It's true. For some people it works. For some it doesn't. But but the problem is that within religion you'll have two sets. Mainly you can divide it into two sets of people. One group of people adheres to the laws, the rituals. They will focus on prayers. It's like God wants me to pray, so I'm going to go to the synagogue every day, every evening, every Shabbat. So you put together the hours they spend in the synagogue, but then their family may be compromised, but they say, no, I'm doing it for God. Not necessarily that they have some kind of an evil inclination, or that they do wrong things, but it's outward. Yeah. So the problem is that some people will eventually stick only to that, and then you still have others who will Shabbat get there.
It's what I call the letter of the law,
yes,
and the spirit of the
right, exactly. So it's easy for people in the name of religion to hide behind stuff like, okay, I'm going to buy the biggest lulav, and I'm going to blow the biggest shofar, and I'm going to pray more, and I'm going to study Kabbalah. I say, don't go into Kabbalah and mysticism and learn more before you take care of your fellow men. And unfortunately, some of it is also as a result of the way our codex, our legal codex is set up. Because when Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he divided it into 4 sections, and he wanted people to study all 4 sections. Or Haim Ovadia, Choshen Mishpat Yoreh De'ah. Or Haim deals with the daily prayers, with services, etc. Yoreh De'ah with the laws of kosher and other miscellaneous. Ovadia with marital laws and the family, and Choshen Mishpat with financial laws. So, but as it turned out, everybody wants to, let me start from the beginning, daily prayers, etc. So what he did in Or Haim, which is daily prayers and Shabbat and holidays, he wrote about getting up in the morning, going to the synagogue, doing everything, and then praying in the afternoon. In between, in chapter 156, he said, following prayers, go to work, v'yisa v'yiten be'emunah, and make sure you conduct your business with honesty. Right? So it's easy for people to gloss over that, and I already learned the first 155, I don't have to do that. But what he really wanted people to do is to go to Choshen Mishpat, which deals with financial laws, and study all of it. So that's where we really have to be attentive to the system and realize that we're talking with a wholesome system where you have to fulfill one and the other, and you can't do one without the other. And I'm not going to say that one is better than the other, because then I'm giving grades. But I would say this, from experience, from what I've seen, that if you have a person whose natural tendency is to fulfill or to observe the mitzvah between him and God, but he's not so good on the personal relationships, and he's missing on that, it will be much more difficult for him to change it than a person who's good on the interpersonal relationships, but is missing something with his relationship with God, because he already has the good basics. One who is sort of like cantankerous or angry or upset with other humans, will find it difficult to change it. It's very difficult to change someone who has that. So let's go to the text for a second. So let's see what we can achieve. Right. So verse 2, Daber kol adat bnei Israel v'amata alehem kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be. Usually we translate it as holy, but in the Tanakh, in the Bible, kadosh does not mean holy. It means separate, set aside, distinct. So you say you should distinguish yourself, for I am distinguished, meaning that is what Helen said before about always being aware that there's a higher level. One of, I think, the central themes of this chapter is the awareness. Don't let yourself be swept away with the multitude. Always be unique, always be distinguished, not in a way that puts down other people, but rather in a way that you focus on yourself. You're a unique human being. What is it that is? And it's interesting that because today now there's the new humanism or robotism, I don't know what to call it, is speaking about the fact that we are really all the same. We're just a composition of molecules and chemical reactions and neurons that tell us what to do. We don't decide anything. We're just machines, and machines can replace everything. Yuval Noah Harari just published a book on that, which is praised by many, but I think there are all terrible things in the book, because he misses the point of the power of emotions and individuality. But what the Torah tells you, Kedoshim to you, each and every one of you is kadosh in the sense of unique individual with unique gifts, exactly. And since you have a unique role, you can never say someone else can do this for me. No, because your job, your role is unique for you. So ish imo ve'aviv tirau. It starts with this. That where do you place that? You have to revere your mother and father. Does it fall under the interpersonal or the between me and God concept? It's hard to say. And I would say that it belongs to both, because to nurturing a certain reverence is a key for also having reverence towards God, which as a result will affect our relationships with other people.
As a child, you learn it from the Ten Commandments.
Right, kabedet avicha. Right.
And it's there for you if you want to use it.
Right. And then it says ve'et Shabbatot tishmoru, but also keep the Shabbat. And the Shabbat, just like father and mother in the sense of family, when there is a healthy family, unfortunately, not all of us have a healthy upbringing and healthy families, but we try to make, kids, thank God, are very resilient. They try to make as much of it as they can. But when you have that gift, it really crafts shapes the child into a unique individual within the family. And even siblings are not the same, because the first child was born into parents with no children, and the second one is born into parents already either seasoned or worn out by the first one, and so on. And then, so Shabbat also creates a unique experience. The idea of Shabbat is also it says, Ani Hashem Elohim, always, I am God, right? I am God. Why? God is unique. Shabbat is unique. Shabbat, even as a nation, we sort of build for ourselves what we could call a temple in time. Wherever you are, Shabbat protects you and preserves you, and you could grow from it. So it creates a space within the community, within the nation, but also for an individual to have his Shabbat. Do not follow idols. Do not make molten images. Again, I am God. So what do we benefit from it? What do we benefit? How do we benefit from it as humans, as individuals? This is part of the constant campaign of the Torah against paganism, against idol worshipping. Why does Torah launch this campaign? Why does God care if someone worships idols? Why does He care? His ego is hurt? Obviously not.
Because He sees you being stupid. And He wants you to be...
He cares, right? He cares for you, right? The same way that I once got upset at my daughter when we were driving in LA, Beverly Hills, and across the street we see a white Rolls Royce and Antonio Banderas is driving it. And my daughter went nuts. She's like, oh my God, like a teenager. Oh my God. I was like, okay, stop it. Oh my God, no, Antonio Banderas. I said, okay, I'm going to pull off right away. This is an idol, right? That's what I call, the celebrities are idols. And it happens in LA all the time. You go into Starbucks and they get people from American Idol, The Voice. One of my friends, a rabbi, once someone knocks on his window, Jessica Alba. She says, "Please, could you give me a ride because the paparazzi were following her?" And she says, "I can't get away from him." She knew as a religious person, he didn't even know who she is. So anyway, she was going nuts. I said, "I'm going to pull off," and I says, "Listen, if you don't stop at this right away, no more TV for you, no more movies." I don't know if they have iPad at the time. And I was a little too harsh, and I said, "Okay, I don't want you to cry. I'm sorry. Listen." She said, "Dad, why are you so upset?" I said, I'm upset because we're getting excited over someone who gave you nothing. How is he a role model for you? What do you learn from him? How is he as a human being? He's a great actor, no question. He's good on the screen. Does he deliver a positive message to you? Did you learn? If you did, okay. But just because he's a name, so we create an image for ourselves and we fall for it, and then we forget to do what we have to do for ourselves and for others. That's why the Torah is against us, because when the idol becomes your centerpiece, then you forget about others. And also, in a sense, the idols are the people's substitute for real religion. They know it's not real, but they want to have some religion in their life. So they create that fake religion, and they tell that fake God, "Tell me what to do." It's basically, it's their own voice. It's a personal worship. They worship themselves. So now the next halakha, we're still sort of in the realm of between us and God, and it seems strange that we have this halakha, this law stuck here. It says when you sacrifice an offering of well-being to the Lord, sacrifice it so that it may be accepted on your behalf. It shall be eaten on the day you sacrifice it, or the day following. But what is left by the third day must be consumed in fire. It should not be eaten on the third day. And if it does, it is a profanity, and this is not going to work for you. But why is it so important? And I think that if I take it in the context of how we conduct our relationships with others, so it says, don't dwell too much on the ritual. If you could, bring the sacrifice to the altar and sit there for 3 days, it's too much. Go back to work. What are you doing here? You ate it the first day, second day. That's it. Enough. Don't dwell too much on the celebration. This speaks about lichzonchem tizbahu, something that you bring voluntarily. God says, I designated for you 3 times a year, the pilgrimage holidays. Go to Yerushalayim, celebrate as much as you want with everyone. But when you do it alone, don't dwell on it too much. 2 days and then go back. Otherwise, it goes on forever. It becomes an orgy or this kind of a hedonistic celebration. And that's also for the word pigul in Hebrew. In verse 7, it's a little difficult word. It doesn't appear much in Tanakh. If we go by the bi-radical root of pei gimel, it begins pei gimel. So we have 3 words from that root in Hebrew. Pigul, here, pagash, to meet, which is sometimes an abrupt confrontation, and paga, which also to hit someone or to be abrasive. So God says this is abrasive. If you do the meeting, it's like a meeting between me and you that's supposed to elevate you spiritually. But if you extend it for more than 2 days, then you are not engaged in spirituality. You're engaged in self-indulgence. That's the connection, I think. Yes,
I
Stanley.
always assumed that in a hot climate, which is where they grew up,
Yeah.
this was partly for hygiene because
That-
you go off quickly.
That could also be a possibility. But unless they roasted it first, in which
But it's roasted.
It still wouldn't last till the
But it's
third
still-
day. It would be
Yeah.
That's what
You'd be sick.
I was thinking whether it was purely a hygienic.
yeah, that could be a possibility. That's a
You'd have maggots on it already.
Yeah,
from
well,
the heat.
that was
Yeah.
my thought.
that could have been a possibility, but I'm always right. No, I think it's a very, and it actually would fit perfectly because God is all this is to protect you.
That's right.
But I think if you could put them together, don't engage too much on that, and because otherwise you're right. Because according to my explanation, so one could bring one sacrifice, and on the second they bring another one, and it can stay there forever. Right? That's good. Okay, I accept it.
Well, like you, I mean, each week I sit there and I read it, and I read the commentaries and the rest of it.
No,
And I thought, it makes more sense. It's hygienic.
Yeah. Again, like in your background, like chemistry, what will happen, right? That's pigul means something abrasive, something that could harm you. So what Stanley says, I think it makes a lot of sense. The Torah really wanted to protect people. Yeah, after 3 days, it's not the same way. The same goes, by the way, for nevela and trefa, according to the biblical Hebrew. In rabbinical Hebrew, the rabbis explain nevela as an animal that nitnabla b'shchitata, that the shechita didn't go right, and trefa is that the slaughtering was correct, but there was a blemish in the animal. But according to the Torah, nevela and trefa means nevela is an animal that died naturally, and trefa is an animal that was killed by a predator. Right. And obviously, the Torah wants to protect you.
Yes. Because
if the animal died naturally, it's unnatural. You don't know what happened to it. See mad cow in England, right? We know that. It started by, you know how it happened. Cows were dying from a disease, and instead of thinking, okay, this is something dangerous, we get rid of it, they ground the meat into feed, and they fed other animals with it, spreading the disease. Yeah. So if they would have followed the Torah, it says, okay, no, this is not consumable. To that, right? And terefa is the same thing. A predator.
No, not now.
And again, with terefa, now we know that domesticated animal that come in contact with predators are going to have mutated viruses that are very dangerous for humans. So the Torah always says, that don't touch them. Okay, good. Now, verse 9 speaks about 9 and 10 is this: when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not pick the vineyard bare, or gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I, the Lord, am your God. And here again, why I am your God? I'm watching.
That's right.
I'm watching, because you could go to the field and harvest everything and say, oh, I forgot, or I didn't have any remnants. There were no small grapes. There were only big grapes, right? But God is watching. Like they say in the shul where some people would take from the food and put in their bags. So the rabbi said, okay, we have to fix it. So he put a big sign next to the apple or the bagels, right? It says, God is watching. So he put on the bagel next to the bagels. The guy passes the bagels and he takes from the apples, and the other guy says, didn't you see the sign? He says, yeah, but God is busy watching the apples and the bagels. And he can take that. But besides that, there's another very important component here, and that is the driving engine of the Jewish economy or Jewish success. And that is, the Torah teaches us to give. That everything we do, we want to succeed in order to give others. And what it does, it's an engine that never stops. Because if one, and not only that, it's a positive engine. When one is focused on his own well-being, then either he's going to go with greed and just try to get more and more and more. But we're talking about an agrarian society. So there was a limit to how much you could get from your fields. So because if you wanted to get really a tremendous amount, you'll have to get more land and more workers, and it would not be easy to control all these lands. Today with real estate and other, and high tech, you could amass fortune more easily. But still, it's an applicable principle. But what the Torah says is this: you are going to amass wealth so you could share with others. So you don't rest, because you always have this positive purpose. I'm going to share with others. So if the first year I had 100 ton in my field and I gave 10 tons as tithes, as maaser, I want to have next year. So you say you want to get more so you could give more. And I mentioned this book before, Give and Take by Adam Grant, that Give and Take by Adam Grant. He's a psychologist who teaches now in Wharton School, in Pennsylvania University in UPenn, and he writes about that, how givers who always work in order to give others, but their focus is not. They don't give in order to grow, to have more, but they give genuinely, and that's how the Torah educates people. Ruth and Boaz, definitely. Then comes what I mentioned before, 11 to 13, which is honesty, avoiding embezzlement and all that, which have to be under God's watchful eye, because if it's only between us, we would always find ways to round corners, to cut corners, to say, okay, this doesn't apply here, this doesn't apply there. Or like people say, I know that stealing is not right, but from that person, it's a mitzvah to steal. Like when I was in high school, some of my friends used to go to a restaurant not like a restaurant, like a fast food, falafel stand or something, in the Midrahov. It just opened back then. And they would come back and brag, like, we ate for free. So how did you eat for free? He said, no, there's so many people there. You just go, take a plate, sit, and and you could just walk out without paying. But this is stealing. You say, oh no, that's not stealing. They make so much money, and they charge so much that they, what is this justification? This is the freeloader. This is the free rider. Another standoff, by the way, of falafel that opened that not the same restaurant, the one that they called Melech HaFalafel, originally came with this concept of free salads. But after a month or so, we had to change the policy and give like maybe 1 or 2 rounds, because what people did,
it was abuse.
You know how it was abused? People used to get the falafel and the pita and eat from the pita and then refill it with salad. And they would keep again and again and again until the pita fell apart. Yeah. So, but those are the small things. When you think about someone like Bernie Madoff, right? Or other, Ponzi schemes or stuff like that. How can people get away with that? Wells Fargo last year. Who got the heat eventually? Not the real, not the top guns. Kenneth Lay and Enron, which by the way is discussed in this book, Give and Take, and he shows that if you follow the criteria of seeing how people give to others or take from others, you could have predicted the fall of Enron years in advance.
Is there anything in our beautiful religion to suggest that some people feel no guilt at all? I ask because if I even thought of doing that or taking a lettuce leaf and walking away with it, I would feel so guilty the rest of my life.
Right, so that's the topic of my articles, right?
Yes.
And I said that there is positive guilt. Guilt when it's used to prevent you from harming other people is good. And it's a natural. That's why it's a natural emotion. It's a natural sensation. But you have to be careful not to let you completely paralyze you. But there are people like that. The Torah doesn't suggest it as saying there are people like that. But by the fact that the Torah gives you legislation to protect you from people like that, it means that they exist. But there is one story, I think that it's typical in the Tanakh, about Lavan, the Aramean, is someone like that. He abuses Yaakov. Then there's someone whose name is the opposite of Lavan. His name is Naval, which also means a black-hearted, right? I don't want to say, anyway, so it's black-hearted, but it also comes from root nevela, a dead corpse, meaning he feels nothing. And what happens with Naval, David, when King David was running away from King Saul, he protected his sheep in the desert, and he worked for him, and then he came to Naval to collect his payment, and Naval says, "Who are you?" Today there are many slaves who run away from their master. What he was saying is, I know that you have a conflict with the king. So if you don't kish, right, if you don't leave right now, I'm going to inform the king about you and he's going to kill you. So thank you very much for working for me, but I'm not going to pay you. That is Naval. Like it's interesting that Lavan and Naval have the same name. So then you have in 14 another beautiful phrase, I think. You shall not insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind. You shall fear your God, I am the Lord. And that is again not to be taken literally. Of course, that the literal meaning is okay. The literal meaning also is valid. Do not insult someone who's deaf, who cannot hear you. Do not put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. But the allegorical meaning of do not cause harm to people who are not aware of it.
Help those who can't help themselves. But there's something you said.
Water.
You said earlier that that there's something built in that makes you want to be happy.
Okay.
My thought is you say that because we live and you've grown up in a civilized society. The thing I can never come to terms with is if you don't accept the existence of a God who handed these things down, how in the world did these concepts arise in that day and in that age when it was very uncivilized?
Right.
And I mean, these concepts are still they're so advanced.
Right. We still are not fully capable of keeping them.
Exactly. This is what
I think you hit the nail on the head, because this is what I tell people when we debate, and it comes up quite often that people debate like, I don't know that the Torah is valid, that was given by God. I said, okay, one of two. to have such concepts at that time, those concepts, don't stick to the, witches and no, look at the full thing and realize that the Torah is a system of delivery. There were some things that were relevant only to that time and age, and they were meant in order to carry, just like the capsule of the antibiotic delivers, the content. This is the real content. And this could only be divine. Now, even if you claim that the Torah is not divine, people say that there's no divine entity, and if there is, it's not concerned with communicating with humans. Oh, fine, I'll accept it. But you know what? It's still worth following it.
But
Because
I can't conceive how this could have arisen without this divine inspiration.
Right, so I'll tell people that. I said either it's divine or that someone, a really highly evolved human who wrote that, and you should be inspired by him, just like you would be willing to listen to the Buddha or any other entity, or a self-help guru today, or Watson tomorrow, the Deep Blue.
But the whole point is it was in that time and that age,
Yes.
which makes it remarkable.
It is remarkable, there's no question. And there are many other laws like that really help us, but we don't even realize how deep they run. So the next verse, 15, is interesting. Lo ta'asu avel b'mishpat. You shall not distort justice.
Yeah.
And look at that. This is something that could not have been understood maybe before today. Lo tisa penei dal velo tedar penei gadol. Do not favor the poor or show deference to the rich.
That's right.
I mean, you would say, be fair. Don't favor the rich. There's no way you're going to favor the poor. Who's going to favor the poor? You never do that. But you know what? Come to the 21st century America and go to a certain building on York, for example, like off the FDR Drive in Manhattan, the UN building, right? And you'll see exactly how we favor the poor.
That's right.
Right? Because if you describe the Palestinians as David and the Israelis as Goliath, right? Everybody's on their side.
That's right.
And if I come and say just honestly, you know what? Put religion aside. Put conquest aside. Terrorism is wrong. You cannot justify terrorism. No. In this case, it's justified. Anywhere else in the world, it's wrong. But here, it says, okay, the Torah is against that. This is how, liberalism sometimes is dangerous because it shuts off other possibilities. You have to be honest and see things as they are. Then I'm saying that with admitting to people, says Israel is not talit shekurat chelet. It's not all pure, not all righteous. We made mistakes. There was distortion of justice. There are ways to mend it. There are ways to fix it, not through terrorism. Okay, lo telech chachil be'amecha, lo ta'amod al damrecha, ani Adonai. Two mitzvot that are put in one verse. You shall not deal basely with your countrymen. Do not profit by the blood of your fellow. I am the Lord. So they're connected. Lo telech chachil be'amecha, we usually translate as to deliver gossip or calumny or lashon hara. But it comes with word rachil, which is a rochel. A rochel is a vendor. Is in Spanish called a vendedor ambulante. Ambulate,
You spread.
You buy from one and you sell to another. Just like he's a tradesman, he's the middleman, right? He trades information. He trades information about celebs, about others. Because what you do is lo ta'amod al dam recha, you're killing another person. But also it's a warning against standing idly by when someone else is suffering. Meaning inaction is a crime. You can't say, I didn't know. All these things are the way that the Torah describes them is you think that you could get away by saying, I didn't know. No, God knows. And when it says God knows, it means this. You know who's going to suffer eventually, just like those that are from idolatry. You are going to suffer. Society is going to suffer. What is maybe the most atrocious example of standing idly by? The Holocaust. But it happened before at a smaller scale with the Armenian Holocaust, and it is happening now with Syria. The word is standing idly by. except maybe for Israel, who takes in refugees. Why is the word standing idly by? Because Syria has no oil. Right? If it had other oil, other than olive oil, then maybe they would have helped more, like Kuwait, like the Gulf War. But here, we say, okay, we don't want to get involved. We don't want to create additional conflict. And with other places as well. לא תשנא את אחיך בלבביך, I have to run out. הוכיח תוכיח את עמיתך ולא תישא עליו חטא, לא תיקום ולא תיטור את בני עמך, ואהבת לרעך כמוך אני אדוני. I want to conclude with that. So it says this, you shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove your kinsman and incur no guilt because of him. Meaning that just part of that, you should not stand idly by. So if you say that someone is doing something, you have to speak up. And when you speak up, it's not that you're not guilty, but you did your part. You're responsible. The Great Fire in the train station in London happened because the train station was compartmentalized, and each person was in charge. Each baron, I think they call them, of the train station, right, was in charge of a different section. One was in charge of the stairways. One was in charge of the trains, and then they saw the smoke coming up, but the person who saw it was not in charge of the stairways, and it was a devastating disaster. The same here says, when you don't reprove someone who does something wrong, you are responsible. So of course, you know what happens is that usually the reproof, the reproach is in the religious field. Oh, your tefillin is not, the right spot. You're talking during prayers. Beautiful example, because there are those who speak incessantly throughout the prayers, right? But then when they are quiet for 1 second and they hear someone else, they go shh. They just never see the fact that they do that. So I said, you know what? I don't mind. You just speak, but don't rebuke others. But it's more about really education, and it has to be done with sensitivity. Even that sentence, I only do it because I love you, doesn't really...
But so significant. Nearly everyone ends in some form or another.
I am God. Right, because all these things, the rabbi say, Mesurim lalev, it's in your heart. Nobody really knows what is your intention. Right? When you come and rebuke someone, do you really care about that person? Or do you just want to clear your conscience? Or you want to show everyone that you're better than him? So those are things. Lo tikom velo titoret ben amecha. Do not take vengeance or not hold a grudge against your countrymen, and love the others as you love yourself. And that is, I think, an imperative also, that it's not just God tells you not to take vengeance because you're going to harm others. You're going to harm yourself also. The same verse, love yourself. Because when your life is geared towards revenge, then at a certain point there will be emptiness. Justice has to be done, but not in the sense of revenge. Grudge, at a certain point you have to let go of your grudges. I mean, if it's fixable, you fix it. If it's unfixable, keep away from that person. Right? If someone needs to be judged for that, judge, but don't live, we drag with us memories and grudges from centuries. And that is how the Torah ends. So all these things teach you first and foremost how to love yourself, and then you learn how to love others. So it's all in all, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful parasha that's worth learning this chapter.
You see in the